that burneth all the day. Behold, it is written before me, I will not keep silence, but will recompense, even recompense into their bosom. Your iniquities and the iniquities of your fathers together, saith the Lord, which have burned incense upon the mountains, and blasphemed me upon the hills. Therefore I will measure their former work into their bosom. Thus saith the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one saith, destroy it not, for a blessing.
Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study in Amos today. We're picking up at chapter 16. Let's read it. Woe to them that are at ease in Zion, and trust in the mountain of Samaria, which are named chief of the nations, to whom the house of Israel came. Pass ye unto Calneh and see, and from thence go ye to Hamath the Great. Then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Be they better than these kingdoms? Or their border greater than your border? Ye that put far away the evil day, and cause the seat of violence to come near, that lie upon beds of ivory, and stretch themselves upon their couches, and eat the lambs out of the flocks, and the calves out of the midst of the stall, that chant to the sound of the viol, and invent to themselves instruments of music like David, that drink wine in bowls, and anoint themselves with the chief ointments, but they are not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. Therefore now shall they go captive with the first that go captive, and the banquet of them that stretch themselves shall be removed. The Lord God hath sworn by himself, saith the Lord, the God of hosts, I abhor the excellency of Jacob, and hate his palaces. Therefore will I deliver up the city with all that is therein. And it shall come to pass, if there remain 10 men in one house, that they shall die. And a man's uncle shall take him up, and he that burneth him, to bring out the bones out of the house, and shall say unto him that is by the sides of the house, Is there yet any with thee? And he shall say, No. Then shall he say, Hold thy tongue, for we may not make mention of the name of the Lord. For behold, the Lord commandeth, and he will smite the great house with breaches, and the little house with clefts. Shall horses run upon the rock? Will one plow there with oxen? For ye have turned judgment to gall, and the fruit of righteousness into hemlock. Ye which rejoice in a thing of naught, which say, Have we not taken to us horns by our own strength? But behold, I will raise up against you a nation, O house of Israel, saith the Lord, the God of hosts, that they shall afflict you from the entering in of Hamath unto the river of the wilderness. We won't get to 7, and I was looking at it to think maybe we should read a little more. If we got through all 14 of these today, that would be good. I like even more reading, but you notice throughout Amos the emphasis on the God of hosts. He is the God of hosts, the God of armies. That's what hosts mean. As God of hosts, because he's bringing the Assyrian army upon them. That is the message Amos is bringing. Repent, return to the Lord, seek the Lord now. God sends his prophets early, like before the Assyrians come. That's why they're notable. That's why people are like, oh, we got to save what this dude wrote, because he said it before. And while, Jeremiah is prophesying as it's happening, but that's still impressive. I'm impressed that Alex Jones predicted 9/11 2 months before it happened. I mean, it's like, they're going to hit an airplane with buildings, and, there's a video out there. I was like, because he read the same things that George Bush was like ignoring. That's how he knew. It wasn't like prognostication or biblical numerics or some sort of strange thing. What I'm saying is, like, you can observe things and knowing, and sometimes they signal it, but with prophecy, sometimes people aren't signaling necessarily, but you read the signs. What is going on? Woe to them that are at ease in Zion. I need to have a drink of water, I think. Hopefully it melts quickly. Everything felt fine. It just suddenly, as I began to read. But being at ease in Zion, there's many scriptures where it talks about this. There's, woe to you women that are at ease. There's all this. But being at ease. People want to be at ease. And, what is it? Part of the reason that ease is nice is one of the prerequisites for ease is peace. It's hard to be at ease if you don't have peace. And peace is a desirable thing. So we want peace. See, one of the things I push back against ease, meaning things are easy. Things allow you to not use strength. This is easy. I don't even need half my power. Like this isn't a workout. Waving a piece of paper. Oh, it's the wave the paper workout. It doesn't work. It's too easy. God delights in work. He himself works, but he also rests. Rest is not the same as ease. Rest is the result of work. You work and you rest. It's a cycle. Ease is a state of taking your ease, much like, and sometimes we must ease the burdens of life, or the burdens of life become heavier. Like my father, he's very old, and he can barely walk it's not. I thought it was neglect at one point, and maybe that's partially, or maybe we didn't push back hard enough against it. But after he had a stroke, he began to shuffle his feet and slowly has lost a lot of his motor strength and control. So he needs a lot of help. Going up a flight of stairs is difficult for him. So it's like, it's not that in his retirement he's taking it easy. He can't swing an axe anymore. That's all. And of course, to every man according to his ability. It's expected that we should work with our hands and with our abilities, and that's a metaphor. If you don't have hands, you work with your mind. If you don't have a mind, whatever. Then I don't know why. I always think the other side. So I work myself into a corner that way. If you don't have a mind, then you're not responsible because you can't have thought. Okay, that was why it was a silly thing to say. Okay, but I don't like when they portray heaven as a place of just ease. It's not a place of ease. It's a place of rest, but also of praising the Lord. And I think of productive work. People always I don't know what we hate so much about work. Work existed before the fall. Like God had work before sin entered into the picture. Why anyone would think there wouldn't be any work in the world to come is foolish to me. No, I know. No, it's not foolish. It's because it's a general notion. I'll never work again. I'll just lay here on a cloud and eat pastries and never get fat. That would not... See, when they say doing that forever is the same thing as hell, as far as I'm concerned. That's the same thing as hell. The monotony, that's the point these people were making about how heaven is just like hell, because ultimately it's just monotonous. And I'm like, oh no, you're not thinking properly. You don't have the biblical. You don't have. It's a biblical notion of what heaven is like, what the ideal situation is, and it's not one that's work free. The original Eden, God would put man there to work the garden. Work is part of heaven. People always just like, oh, you don't work. Yeah, you can't work your way into heaven or for salvation. Of course not. But when you get there, you're expected to keep working. What do you think you're going to do? Even praising the Lord is a form of work in a sense. It can be a work. You can put your all into it, right? Write a song, put together some music and stuff. I work at it. And so there's work to be done in all various ways of life. And not just work, but to exert oneself in a productive way. I mean, not labor and toil like the way that there's the curse where it's like, it's not going to be productive for you anymore. You're going to, in the sweat of your brow, you're going to eat food until the day you die, and for dust you are, and to dust you shall return. But that's not what heaven's like. It's not like that. You're going to work, and it's going to be productive. Your works are going to really prosper in good things. You're going to build houses, and they're going to last. You'll plant vineyards, and the fruit will grow. It will be productive. It won't be smitten with disease. You don't want to use pesticides and stuff. Not that I ever do anyways. The only pesticide I ever use is diatomaceous earth. You just have to reapply it all the time because it washes off in the rain. But it does a pretty good job of keeping the caterpillars off of your, the type of stuff that gets eaten up in the garden, As long as you go around and dust it with that. Helps. I think it works on a lot of trees too. I gotta try that on my apples this year. Anyways, I like work. Yesterday I tilled up my entire garden, which is a lot. It takes a couple hours, and planted some stuff out there. Real early stuff, like Jerusalem artichoke and like that. And, I enjoy that kind of work. My shoulders are all sore today, but it feels good. I like getting out there and working in the soil with my hands. In making things more orderly and beautiful, like in the Garden of Eden. To me, making more and more stuff like that sounds like a lot of fun. I could get, as long as if I'm not tiring the way I do now, if I'm not, if I have the energy, I don't understand the monotony aspect of it, but maybe I could figure that out. I don't know. And the Lord is your companion. So how could that not be infinitely interesting? Like I said, I'm willing to risk that. The fact that, you think eternity might get boring. Okay. I don't think the Lord thinks so. He probably thinks this has been a pretty interesting little episode. And there could be a lot more interesting episodes. I don't want to miss out. So let's not take our ease, but rather ready ourselves. The Lord is a worker, and we will be workers too. When he came here, he didn't come here to, my Father worketh, and I worketh hitherto. And that was because he was doing things on the Sabbath like healing. But that kind of work is appropriate for the Sabbath. To do because the point of the Sabbath was not is to cease from your own labor, as God ceased from his own labor. He was doing his business, man. And in the law, for 6 days, men would do their business and take their work. And then on the Sabbath wasn't for taking your ease. It was for resting and remembering the Lord. It was the Lord's Sabbath. He rested, so you rest. And they would also, and because, and like I said, but in the New Testament, as a Gentile, I don't regard it as such because I'm not under that law. And those questions were answered. They didn't say when they said, well, what do the Gentiles have to do? How much of the law do they have to keep? They weren't like, okay, the 10 Commandments. No, they were like, drinking blood, fornication, eating things sacrificed to idols. And what was the other one? Oh, I forget. Whatever. I got it in the wrong order anyways. But, they listed off things. They were like, and the Sabbath day. No, very consistent in the New Testament. Jesus pushes at the boundaries of people's understanding of the Sabbath in a legalistic sense. And also in the matter of the fact that not even one jot or tittle of the law could possibly pass away unless all was fulfilled. Therefore, all was fulfilled because we no longer... I could show you lots of laws that you do not do and you should not do, such as animal sacrifice and such, because all sacrifices are fulfilled in Christ. And if they are not all fulfilled, then, and if all the law is not fulfilled, then you can't take away any little part of it. Anyways, back to the ease. Working is good. It's not to earn salvation, you silly boy. It is because it's good. because that's part of what being an upright, righteous person like Christ is. When you're following Christ, you work. Those that labor in the gospel, yes, sometimes they partake of the gospel, but sometimes they work with their own hands. That's always the better thing to do, if when possible. I would say that. People who start off trying to make a living off of doing work for God, I do think that is, I'm glad that was not my path. I used to have a little donation collection thing, but I never, apart from single donations that never exceeded, the biggest one I ever got from a non-family member was $500. The next biggest was like $200, I believe. And so, something like that. Most of the time, and it wasn't and in a whole year, it never exceeded either of those amounts, except in the years when those were the amount. But I always claimed it on my taxes. That's another thing. I don't pretend to be a charity. But people had wanted to give, And people may still want to give. But I say give to something else. One of the things I'm going to be giving to, if I can in the future, and I'm thinking about canceling other things. I'm looking at where I can cut back just so I can give to this feedingthewatchdogs.org, which is all about watching Google and seeing what they're up to. And I definitely want to put money into that. I don't have a lot of money to give, but I want to put at least a little bit. And I suggest others do too. You should check it out. feedthewatchdogs.org. Anyways, it's just one small thing. I'm like, I'm a little, it's like one of those things like feed a child for, a little bit. It's like, okay, feed the watchdogs for a little bit. I get it. So the trust in the mountain of Samaria. Notice Zion, of course, is Jerusalem. Samaria is not Jerusalem. It's the capital of Israel. So, to me, and then it says, which are named chief of the nations. It's both. It's because it's Judah and Israel. And the Assyrians did attack both Judah and Israel. People often say, oh, it was only Israel. Actually, the whole nation. There was just a remnant. In Isaiah, I forgot if it's 36, 37, 38, right in there when it starts going into the historical portion. It's probably 37. But it was saying that the king of Assyria came up against all the defensed cities of Judah and took them. He went up against all the defense, and then Jerusalem was left alone. Of all their defense cities, their fortress cities, that was it. And it's not like the Assyrians could sweep up every single human being in Israel. It's not that easy. So there's always a remnant left behind. A lot of them having been warned, or whatever, or whatever. The Lord has his ways of delivering those. We will. And of course, he delivered Hezekiah, the king of Judah. But that was the end of the kingdom of Israel. And in fact, it was because of the Assyrian captivity that the Assyrians imported strangers from the east who to inhabit the northern kingdom, because they had depopulated that so thoroughly. Whereas in Judah, Jerusalem remained, so there was still a power center that still existed. And he resisted total domination by the Assyrians. Even though his kingdom was reduced to literally his capital city until the Lord smote the Assyrians and sent them back. And that was the end of their expansion, pretty much. In the beginning of the rise of Babylon. Because though Judah was spared, there would the Lord would come against even his holy temple. The Assyrians could not touch the temple, but the Babylonians would destroy it. But they trust, though in Zion they're at ease, they trust in the mountain of Samaria, because of their strength of their nation. They were two nations, split, but both of them strong from having fought each other and from having been at first a very wealthy kingdom and still being quite wealthy, and at times allying with their neighbors and such and with each other. Because it wasn't they had periods of civil war, but also periods of peace where they would not, actively be at war with each other, obviously, because, You just can't have constant warfare when the kingdoms were divided, and they didn't. But even so, like I said, they had that sense of their history, right? And being Israel, they knew what that name meant. They knew it meant Jacob who prevailed with the Lord, and who wrestled with God. And so it meant a prince. It was like a princely name, Israel. And so it's easy to get lifted up in your heart and thinking we're something as a nation. We're a great, powerful nation. We are the descendants of David and Solomon. We are the tribes which Moses led through the wilderness. We're the sons of Abraham, whom God appeared to who He promised that we would be the powerful nation that we are. Prophecy fulfilled. I mean, that they could look at their history and they had this understanding of where they came from. And even though they would be not honest, like a lot of Christians and people. I was talking to my wife this morning about from when I was young and I started reading the Bible. I immediately discovered that there was a disconnect between what I was reading in the Bible and what I had generally absorbed about my religion from other people and from what I had heard people talk about on TV. There was a disconnect. It wasn't right somehow. Like the way they talk about Jesus was, I always felt like they didn't get him right. And like they were always trying to soft pedal everything. Like as if that was the only way. Though we should choose the way of peace, of course. But the Lord also is the Lord of hosts. He is a man of war, and Jesus Christ in righteousness shall judge and make war. Just as it says in Revelation, in righteousness he doth judge and make war. And so there is a time for war. And there's a time, like when Jesus said to the apostles about calling down fire from heaven, shall we call down fire from heaven as Elijah did? He said, you don't know what spirit you're of. That doesn't mean that what Elijah did was wrong. It just means that there's a time when that's not for it. I don't know if there'll ever come a time for the prophets to call fire from heaven. Because it's just like Moses and the rock. That's how I look at it. The first time he struck the rock and the water came out, and God says, now speak to the rock. And Moses struck the rock again. And God's like, oh, why'd you do that? You're supposed to speak to it. Because he wanted to demonstrate the power. It's not in violence, but in words. By words, God created the heavens and the earth. Speak to the rock. Don't call down fire from heaven. Speak fire from your lips. To whom the house of Israel came. That line doesn't make sense to me. We got to look at that in the Hebrew. Because at first I'm getting it. I'm like, okay, woe to them that are at ease in Zion. They're powerful. They're rich. They think, who can harm, the Assyrians, they're some far off kingdom. Who cares? And besides, we're strong. We can take them, They're going to come against this city, against these kingdoms, these ancient kingdoms of David and Solomon, and Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And Omri, I don't know if we got to Omri yet. No, Omri would be the one close. I think they were known as the people of Omri by the Assyrians or something like that, like their first contact. And it was just before this, I believe. I have the sheet of paper over there. I'm not going to pull it out. That's probably generally right. We may do Samuel soon because I just like to do that again. It would bring me back to my young days, and it's fun to have someone take you through it. And it's not boring. Okay, so let's go to that part into the Bible Hub. When I first turned on Bible Hub today, the advertisement, there's the stream. Oh, I'm behind a bit. Let's see, chapter 6. Anyways, there was an ad there was like a worm at the bottom of just a worm on my screen. A little worm on someone's finger, and I'm like, what is that weird looking, ugly little worm? And then it was like, remove parasites, and I'm like, thanks. Glad I already had breakfast. I think it's so funny making people what are we eating that we're worried about parasites? Well, To whom the house of Israel came to come. Oh, let's see what. I'm just going to look at the NIV. Woe to you who are complacent in Zion, and to you who feel secure in Mount Samaria, you notable men of the foremost nation, to whom the people of Israel come. I get it. Meaning, you're the leaders to whom the people look, and who they come to you to be the notable men of the foremost nation. Okay. Because it sounded like a recount of history at first, and I kind of fell into that because I was talking about history. And so it's kind of like I said, the King James, sometimes it's not wrong what they did. Well, maybe they got the tense wrong. That could be. Or no, or maybe we just don't, or maybe you have to understand, whatever. It makes more sense in the sense of they come to you, or they've been coming to you. That would be maybe the sense. Maybe it is the past tense and the King James translated it literally. And that's probably a try. I'd rather think they got that right than wrong, but that it doesn't translate well when you do it just right like that. So maybe it'd be more like have been coming. Maybe they don't have that tense in Hebrew and it has to just be the past. You know what I mean? Because I have said, to whom the house of Israel have been coming. Now you understand that is past tense, but but it also kind of continuing. I forgot what we call that in English. Whatever. I'm not going to try to figure it out. This is in an English class right now. When I'm teaching English, I usually have the English textbook with me. Okay. And I've never been able to sort that information as very important into my mind. Like, that's the perfect, and that's the, whatever. Exactly. I've explained it many times, and that's the funny part. That's why I'm laughing about it. Okay. So, pass ye to Calneh. He's talking to the leaders. And see, from thence go to Hamath the Great. That's kind of in the north, geographically. I don't know exactly, Calneh and Isaiah, but it's the borders of Israel. Okay, these are regions on the borders. Go to these places and go down to Gath of the Philistines, which is near Gaza, I believe. Now, remember, the Philistines, I think, ultimately were expelled. I don't believe that the Palestinians are supposed to be the Philistines. And, like I said, the danger of reading that stuff into it, the people who are there as Arabs basically arrived there 1,000 years ago, something like that. As far as as a Muslim population, but also there's a Christian population there, and there was a Jewish population there. There's been a Jewish Arab population, because just like the Jews in Europe, you notice how they're kind of white? The Jews down in African, they're black. Guess what? And the Jews in the Arab countries that have been kind of in the same region all this time, they kind of look like Arabs. Just like Jesus on the shroud kind of looks a little Arabic, if you didn't notice. He looks like a hook-nosed Jew, but like old school kind. You know what I mean? It's like, so, I mean, ancient. That's why I was looking, I'm like, I've never seen a more ancient Jewish-looking face in my life. It's like, that looks like what I would expect. A man who would not look strange walking around Baghdad or Jerusalem. Those people were all not that closely related, but certainly the Arabs and the Israelites are supposed to be cousins. They're both children of Abraham. That's why they get annoyed when they talk about the Semite. It's not in you understand. Anti-Semitism is a term that's applied in Europe, where the Jews are called Ashkenazi because they lived among the descendants of Ashkenaz as they saw it, right? And so, but they saw themselves as Semites and them and the Europeans as not. But of course, Jews don't have absolute rules against marrying out. They're not like the Amish. They're less insular in many ways than the Amish, especially because they're not required to all be ultra-Orthodox. There are many secular Jews who nevertheless maintain their heritage and are accepted also by the Jewish community as a whole, I guess. As far as the more, I don't know. I don't know how that works, honestly. I can't say because I don't study it. And, I had a friend who was really, when I was back in with Arnold Murray and it was all the Kenite stuff, I remember he had books like about famous Jews and stuff, and it was a little weird, I thought, to be so starting, I was always like into the Bible and into the book, and I wanted to know what did it mean and how do I understand it, and because I thought that was the key. When you study, people when they teach apologetics, they're like, all right, here's what you say when they say this, and here's what you say when they say that. It's all like they jump to the end, they say, here are the answers. But why not lay the foundation first that you have, that you're able to just give an answer because maybe not like the answer, but you can make one up that makes sense based on the Bible, having read it, and just common sense. I don't. Common sense in the sense of wisdom, biblical wisdom applied with a thoughtful process, of examining consequences, potentials, of somewhat. I said, you got to take responsibility for what the consequences of our actions. So we should think about them. Now go to these different places, Gath of the Philistines, be they better than these kingdoms, or their border greater than your border. Are they greater kingdoms? And why is the act? It's obviously a rhetorical question. Right? Pass you to Calneh and see, from thence go to Hamath the Great, then go down to Gath. Be they better than these? I want to know which, because there's multiple kingdoms. Like, Israel and Judah are two kingdoms, and also meaning we have two plural things, and we have two clusters of kingdoms. So is the question, are these three better than those two, or are those two better than those three? But really it's the same question, which is better? Which is better? Is one better than the other? Is their border greater than your border? And I would say, what I'm thinking is, the answer is, no, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same. All these kingdoms that Israel were at war with, a lot of them were just city-states. And Assyria, centered on Nineveh, Nineveh was a city-state as the capital. But they had more than that, of course. They were a growing empire. Now, the Israelites, I think they did not understand how fast this empire would explode. Because the Assyrian empire did explode. It was very rapid expansion. And I don't know if Calneh and Hamath the Great, and Gath of the Philistines, I don't know if the Syrians had been to Gath already, or if they were all destroyed. I don't know. But I think what he's inviting them to compare them, because what he's saying is, and it's very easy to understand by context what it means. That's why I'm not going to bother with all kinds of where is this place? Where you don't need it. It's very obvious what it means. And that's this. You're taking it easy. But let me tell you, I can show you some examples of things, reasons why you should not take it easy. Look at this, look at that. What do you think? Are these better than they? The thing that gets me is, are these better than they? Because I thought he was talking to them, so to speak. I'm talking to you that are at ease. I'm telling you to look here, look there. Are they better than these kingdoms? It must mean Zion and Samaria. Are these better than Zion and Samaria, these kingdoms of Israel and Judah? I think that's what it has to be. Because otherwise, how could they ask them that are at ease in Zion? Because those that are at ease in Zion, you could say, are they better than these kingdoms, Zion and Samaria, of yours, your king? So it makes sense that way. So that's how that is the necessary reading. And saying, because you think no evil can come, or that if it's going to happen, it's going to take a long time. And that's a foolish thing. That's one of the, I'm glad whenever I think about that, it makes me glad that the Lord has given me such a sense of urgency all the time. Because even though it is stressful, to feel a sense of urgency, like the Assyrians coming. And it's difficult to maintain that. But I don't know, when the world is behaving the way it is now, it's not too hard. It's not too hard. Maintaining that sense that like the Lord might be coming soon used to be difficult among the mundacity of life and the peace dividend and all that. Now we have wars and rumors of wars, and it feels a lot more normal. Like the world is tossing to and fro, and as it ought to. And the world should be reeling to and fro like a junkard. Isn't that how it's supposed to go? Yes, something like that. You put far away the evil day and cause the seed of violence to come near. What is the seed of violence? That's it's an idea of, like, we would have the seat of judgment, right? You should have in the seat of judgment, the judge sits and is supposed to deliver justice. So the seat of justice represents, seat of judgment represents the idea of justice being done, and so the seat of violence represents the idea of violence being done. That from the seat of power, because that's what that seat represents, a throne, a power structure that should be delivering judgment and justice, but rather it delivers violence and ruin. And violence, of course, is a hyperbole for all kinds of evil. I mean, not that it doesn't include violence. I think about the way our justice system today, because of evil men's works trying to corrupt it, for what precise reasons you can speculate, but violent criminals are being put back on the street and such. And even for lesser offenses, as the seat of justice becomes a seat of injustice. Because, I get it. It's not cool for innocent people to be persecuted by the police and all, as a way of like trying to clamp down on crime. We're just going to like bring everybody in a big net and give them harsh sentences for little things. That's not cool. But for things that people need to be punished, they got to be punished. Otherwise, your society is going to be filled with evil. But righteous men have to stand up and make sure the government operates properly. The king, quote unquote, the government, it is the instrument of the king. There is no king. We elect someone to pretend to be king for 4 years, and he's limited in his power because he operates under the law, supposedly. And they are limited in their power yet somewhat, even though they vastly overextended it. And of course, the Congress has abrogated its duties and its powers, as far as like over the purse, over war, all these things. And so, I'd love to comfort myself and say, the Lord isn't coming. I can't possibly, but because in a sense, it's nice to think like, I'll grow old with my wife and, see my grandchildren grow up, and then I'll maybe see a couple of great grandkids, and then I'll probably pass away. It'd be nice to think that could be a path. Maybe it is, who knows? I'd love to I would love to see what I can do with myself given that amount of time. I wouldn't mind seeing that, because I'd keep working. I'd keep doing what I do and more, I think, and other things, and so that would be just fine with me. But because I'm not excited. Like I said, the tribulation does not excite me, because I know it's going to be a lot of heart-wrenching death and destruction. I'm not terrified of death or destruction. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, I was working on my song the other day called Christian Rebellion, which is another one of my little ironic things I like to do. Because, of course, that sounds like, wait a second, but no, sometimes you rebel against evil is what when you see evil being done by authority, it's a time to rebel or burn in hell. Rebel or burn in hell. But also, crosses held high, unafraid to die. Christians aren't supposed to be afraid to die, because we have the resurrection. We know when we die, the next thing we're going to do is stand before Christ, and that a happy day. Happy day. I don't It's not, I don't mind being dead so much as I mind getting dead, right? It's more about how you get there than, there's a lot of bad ways to go that I don't particularly like, and I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't even like to think about it too much because I already do too much. Because I've been in some situations, like I said, I've had narrow escapes. I don't even like to think about it. So I feel like I've seen death stare me in the face a couple of times, wink, and then go, "Come on, Paul." As far as like, look out. It's like the Lord looks out for me. But I try not to be. I don't take that for granted. It's just I need looking after. Unfortunately, my wife will tell y'all I need looking after. You gotta take care of him. The Lord has to too. I would it were otherwise. Okay. So I know the evil days could be at hand. We don't want to be like grasshoppers. We want to be like the wisdom of the ants. You prepare ahead of time. Like I live in a northern climate. I realize it's like if the infrastructure that delivers if the grocery store is completely stopped, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive a winter up here? I can't. There's a lot of things I know. I'm ready to heat the home, without fuel, normal fuel and stuff like that. I have ways of obtaining the necessity, at least to make it through one winter. You know what I mean? But, and that's all that's really important because then you can get ready for the next one. You have to make it through one surprise winter. Pray that your flight be not in winter, I don't want to be surprised and fleeing in the wintertime. Look what happened to the Armenian Christians when they had to flee in the winter. It was a genocide, and they died. Women, children, and men. So, like I said, don't think the evil days can't come near you. They can. They very well can. And, if we're caught off guard, we can suffer and die. But we'll still be raised, and then the Lord will say, "Well done, and good and faithful servant." And hopefully you're not cursing God just because of the harshness of life. Sometimes life's hard and we die hard deaths. I'm pretty much convinced I've got one coming. Nothing particularly, this is run of the mill. Maybe it's not going to be hard. It's like, whatever. Maybe just disturbing to other people, I don't know. Don't need to think about it. Because someday it's just going to get you. But I don't put it far away. And then what that means, that gives my life a certain sense of urgency. I may not live very long. I may not make it to the end of the year. I do live, I don't think, oh, next year we'll do this, next year we'll do that. I have vague plans about the future, but I'm always thinking of what do I need to do now? Because I may not have time to do it. I got to prioritize the most important things. But they were complacent. They thought no evil could overtake them. And at the same time, I don't think the seat of violence refers to the Assyrians. I think it means at the same time they're corrupt. They're taking bribes. They're allowing oppression and even being part of it. The government, especially back then, rights. Your rights were basically determined by the temperament of the king. Now, obviously, if a king was too cruel, he risked a revolution. And people, or I don't know if they call it a revolt or whatever. He risked being overthrown, as happened in the Northern Kingdom. There was a lot of, in the Southern Kingdom, it was all the sons of David, and there was a usurper at one point, but otherwise, it was replaced by the seed of David. There was a child that was concealed. And the queen had thought they were all dead, and then they brought forth the child after he had been, brought to a certain point, and she was deposed. So he became king. I forgot which one that was. It was Athaliah's usurpation. It's on my piece of paper, which I'm also not going to pull up. But the point is, the government, corruption usually takes time when you have good laws and good oversight and organizational, when you have just like, internal reviews and stuff that is honest and looking to sniff out corruption and make sure the institutions of power are being run in the way they're meant to be run according to the law and not with corruption. But in those days, it's like it could very quickly change. Suddenly, it's like, oh, careful what you say, because the king is a madman or whatever. Or like these circumstances, it could change much more quickly. Though I gotta say, I was shocked at how quickly things changed in 2020. And it changed me forever in a certain way, because like I said, all of a sudden it's like, I consider songs other than my scripture songs to be priorities. Like, even though I have, because the scripture songs are published, the scriptures exist. But people don't understand how it applies to today. So it doesn't help me say anything about what's going on right now. That's why I had to do that in part. And because, the Bible studies are more useful in that regard, to help people understand. I mean, getting the scriptures in your mind is great, and you can do that. All of them are there. There's not a song there's maybe one or two I've written that you can't get some version of on my website. You just can't get all the fancy versions with all the, but it's like, as a message to the world, the Bible's been staring them in the face. I mean, it's such a pity that, we live in a Christian nation, so it's not a Christian nation. It's not a Christian government. It's not a Christian republic. It is a Christian nation, though, as far as it has been a majority Christian people. And the society has generally been, based on the norms and rules and social constructs of Christianity. That's one of the big complaints we got about it, right? And that's what they don't like. A lot of the prejudices and such, and I don't mean racial prejudices, those shouldn't have existed. That wasn't based on Christianity. That's just based on human nature that's very indelible. And they looked for all kinds of excuses, because you can find ways of excusing all kinds of things in the Bible. How do you think the scribes and Pharisees got to the point where divorce was righteous? Because there was a law, well, so then it should be okay. And you can put your wife away for whatever reason you want, and it's even if you like, I like this girl better. That's literally how it went. They lie upon beds of ivory. Oh, you have such luxury. Stretch themselves upon their couches. Eat lambs out of the flock and the calves out of the midst of the stall. When I hear all this, I feel like, when you think about it, like on a world scale, America, we all live like princes. Like I said, I've only made, whatever, I'm not going to talk about how little money I make. I think I'm talking about the past. I'm just saying, I'm not rich, but I've got a nice soft bed. Softer than anything anyone in the first century probably had felt, except perhaps the most wealthy people. Like only the most wealthy would have the comfort we have, and they probably didn't. Because there wasn't the technology. None of them pressed buttons and had heat appear out of nowhere, and pressed another button, and then ice cold air poured out of vents in their house. That doesn't work in my house, but hey, I have a window. I go to the window and I press a button, and then cold air comes in. With my window unit, that's still pretty. None of them had that. None of them had the window air conditioner. Upstairs, at least, so you don't sweat your brains out all night, right? That was the best we had for years. We had years where we had no air conditioning. And so what? I grew up with no air conditioning. Well, not in the first house, I should say. From about 11 till about I left to college. Then they got air conditioning after I left, of course, right? Whatever. But anyways, and they had it. I would say about... It's funny, it seemed like I grew up without air conditioning. It was like, we didn't have air conditioning for like 7 years in our house. And then I remember it seemed like forever. It's just so funny. All right, we are so wealthy. We have so many comforts. Stretching on couches, I've got 3. Funny thing is, though, I didn't ever bought them. They're just given. That's what I'm saying. It's like, we live in a wealthy country. Where even people, I don't even need to buy things because people give me their throw-offs that are perfectly good because they got new stuff. Well, we got, this one's getting old. It's not torn. It's not nothing wrong with it. I mean, it is well worn. I mean, as far as it doesn't feel brand new, but it doesn't look, right? And I haven't bought a car in years either. Now I mostly get older cars, or I've had a couple that were in accidents, and fix them, or give it, for relatives and stuff. But I'm just saying. But I have a car. I know no pharaoh ever had a car. I mean, people in Egypt have cars. That I don't point out that because air conditioning and stuff, those are real comforts. Cars are different. Because they are very democratic. They go down pretty far with cars. A lot of people have cars. I mean, you look in Gaza, all the blown up cars. I was like, man, they blew up all their cars. I feel bad for it. It's like, man, my car got blown up. I don't know what I'd do. Right? That's why you better figure out what you're going to do. If they blow up your car, if they blow up your country. Because the more we blow up all these other countries, I know my Bible. I know what happens to people that think they're the head of the nations, right? To whom the house of Israel comes for money. Okay? All right? Look around. You heard of Goliath, that big old dude? You may not have heard of those others, right? You think you're better? You think you're better than any kingdom that's ever fallen? Remember, I will bring a nation upon you who will afflict you from the entering in of Hamath to some other place. But that was also about the Assyrian in Isaiah. Okay. But I mean, I just think about how rich we are. Eating the lambs out, just have plenty of food. When you're eating meat, it's a symbol of, eating lambs out of the flock. Because, like they would have the fatted calf, so to speak. They would save those often for special occasions. And, it's all, and sometimes, and so it becomes like, every day is like a special occasion. We're just eating a lamb out of the flock every day. Chant to the sound of the viol. Invent to themselves instruments of music. They got time to sit around. Well, let's come up with new instruments. Nothing wrong per se. Right? Except they are not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. That drink wine in bowls. What's wrong with drinking wine in a bowl per se? It sounds like almost a not what am I drinking? Meaning the fact that it's I understand you could say getting drunk. Yes, that's wrong. But the point is the fact that it's in a bowl, is that wrong? They drink wine out of a bowl. That's not what it means. What I'm saying? It's not that they drink wine in bowls. It's not so much that they invent music like David. People will often use this against, music is wrong. No new instruments should ever be invented. And certain instruments are forbidden, or all instruments are forbidden. The idea of a psalm in the New Testament, when it says the word salo, from which we get psalm, means to use to make a strumming with the fingers. To use the fingers to the sound, to make sound on music. It indicates a musically accompanied piece. That's what a psalm is. Whatever. It just gets to that legalism. It's like, I forgot. It was. I remember now. It was drinking blood, eating things sacrificed to idols, fornication, and instrumental music. That was the other thing they said they should never engage in. Obviously, the funny thing is I never have to worry about, I would assume I got no one from the Churches of Christ, and I can't stomach that they just took that name, listening, because they would, at the beginning of this study, they would have heard the music playing, and they would have been like, the sign of the cross, and I know they don't believe in Catholicism. That's kind of like a jab there, but they're not here to see it, so it doesn't matter. That always bugged me to no end. Just because it's like, I'm like, how could you be so obviously like a Pharisee? How could you obviously strain at a gnat and swallow a camel? Hey. I think that's why they strain at gnats. So they can forget about the fact that they just swallowed a camel. Oh, where's this gnat? It's like, dude, the much bigger thing has already happened. You're not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. They anoint themselves with the chief ointments. Again, that's all about luxury, and carelessness. Just drinking wine in bowls. That might have something to do with the size. I don't know. Is it like we usually drink it in a cup? I don't think so. It's just because it's more about the poeticness of it. They chant to the sound of the viol, invent to themselves instruments of music like David, drink wine in bowls, and anoint themselves with the chief ointments. But they're not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. They're supposed to be, and we can see that in our country. And I can see that in Israel too. The leaders, they don't care about our people, what happens to us. They are more interested in whatever's going on there in Washington, whatever game they're playing. They're playing it, and like how it affects us is only something they yap about. Like they talk out of one side of their mouth like they care about us, but in the actions they take, it's obvious they don't. It's obvious they don't. They could care less about the American people or what happens to them. I mean, not all of them, right? But there's throughout a lot of things. It's like things are done without regard to the benefit of us. It's for the benefit of all of them, And so as the nation hurts more and more, as the people suffer more and more, they are less and less careful about it. They don't care. They're not grieved because they're not suffering. They don't suffer the way people like us suffer. And I always talk about how great I have it, and I do, but also like for me, it can be stressful. Like I said, I've never known a period of more than a month or two where I wasn't living month to month. You know what I mean? It's like usually around tax refund time, and then it's like, there we go. And then finally catch up on those bills. But I'm not a complainer, as far as that goes. Like I said, a lot of it's partly the result of choices that now I can't really reverse. I have to continue on this path and see where it leads me, I suppose. We'll see. But in Israel, they're so bent on hellfire and destruction towards Palestine, and it's like, and it's obvious their greatest goal is to completely batter them out of the country, and whatever it takes to do that. We'll see. I hope they would. I still hope they will not follow through on their new offensive they're trying to do, and there'd be a ceasefire. But their own hostages, and also one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that on the day of the attack, first of all, they attacked. It was a military attack first, but also you can understand how they live. They live. A lot of them like on a frontier type existence, meaning like a kibbutz is like an armed encampment and people living. It's like just think about it's not a lot different than when we were colonizing this country and people lived on the frontier, and all of a sudden here come the Indians. And it's funny to me that we talk about what we did to the Indians. And how wrong it was, and we're all shamefaced about it, right? We're all so ashamed. That annoys me because I'm not ashamed. I'm not going to glory in it because I don't glory in it. I don't apologize for it. It's just that's history. It's not good. Men shouldn't kill each other. They should choose the path of peace. Right. But, ultimately, we ground them down and pushed them out. But not all, but like that took a long time, and it wasn't like sort of like this organized effort all the time. Sometimes it was, okay, but it wasn't like this. But right now it sort of is. Anyways, but like a lot of the people were killed. You'd see these piles of burned bodies. It's like what did they come with flamethrowers? I mean, because the weaponry that Hamas possesses is not equivalent to Hellfire missiles and such. Like I said, A lot of the people who were fleeing, well, who were being taken hostage, they said they were attacked by Apache helicopters because they didn't want to let Hamas get back to Palestine with the hostages. Or if they were, what do they call them? Fronterage. I remember the French word for, what do they call it? Militia, or people who are not exactly, because some people, could have gone over, they were criminals and such. But it's actually primarily a military operation. And anyways, but the point is, like, they would kill a lot of their own people because they have something called a Hannibal Directive, which means you don't let people be taken captive because that's not good for the state as a whole, for the nation. So, they go back, they still have the same attitude of Caiaphas. If one or two people die for the nation, maybe that's what has to happen. And that is their attitude. But you know what? Christ's attitude is, I died for you. Christ's attitude is that he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. He was afflicted for us because he was grieved for us, and the affliction of sin upon us, and the affliction of the consequences of sin, which are just. But God in his mercy sent his son. That's what a real leader is. One who sacrifices himself for the people, not one who sacrifices the people for some glory of the greater nation. That's the way the Germans were thinking in the 40s, not the way the Bible teaches us to think. It's not about the greater territorial glory of any nation. God doesn't even care about territory. He's made that clear. Heaven is my throne. The earth is my footstool. Where will you build a house for me? He didn't want your stupid house. He doesn't want your stupid Mount Zion anymore, except what it symbolizes. The true Mount Zion, the one from above, where the true power resides, where Christ is enthroned and will set foot on Mount Zion. Yes, the place. But he isn't asking us, when you think you're going to build that for him, you don't know what spirit you're of. That's what I say. You're not building any temple to Christ or helping Israel certainly ain't going to build a temple to Christ. And whatever would go on in that temple would be an abomination because the blood of Christ has been spilt. No further animals for sin need be killed. I know where they shall go captive with the first that go captive, and the banquet of them that stretch themselves shall be removed. They get all these riches through corruption and neglecting their duties, and through not ruling right. And you know what? Like it says, judgment begins at the house of God. It always starts at the top. Apostles, prophets, and teachers, pastors, they're first in line. Those who are the most powerful are in the positions of authority or responsibility, right? Same thing with government. Like what did Truman say famously? The buck stops here. It should. The responsibility ultimately lands at the executive. A lot of times, though, I say like, okay, but how can in a government so large, how can they know everything? That's like a Trump appointed this guy, and they mentioned that a Delaware prosecutor appointed by, they're saying that the appointed, the senators send the appointments and then they get, the idea that somehow it would be like his buddy, they assert that, but you have to be in the system to be able to access that in some degree. Anyways, but like in on the corruption, because it's like, it's a club you have to work your way into. You kind of got to pay, either be born into it, to a political type thing, like in the old days, not much different than the old days, or you have to start at the bottom and kind of work your way up, which is possible in the parties. You get in there and you do your work for them or whatever. Or sometimes they can kind of, hijack it a little bit, depending, or it seems, right? And then he kind of, let's just look a little bit, because we may be able to sort of, we've discussed a lot of the concepts here, and I've had all the exposition I think I need to. I just want to look at the verses and see if there's anything that we need to understand. I abhor the excellency of Jacob. Jacob, I remember Bullinger said that refers to the natural seed, I suppose. Well, because it would in a sense, because Jacob would include Israel and Judah, because they were all his sons. So Jacob is talking about the whole of them. I hate his palaces. I don't like, his uppityness, the excellency of Jacob. What does that word mean? I'm going to look at that real quick. Arrogancy. Yeah, because, they trust in their palaces. They trust in their fortresses. They think nothing can happen. They put far away the evil day. That's sort of the conclusion of the thing, even though they put it as a new heading here in the over in Bible, obviously they put a new paragraph heading there, but it kind of also is the conclusion of the matter. Therefore, I will deliver the city and all that is therein. Deliver up the city. What city? Well, for sure, Samaria. He's mentioned Samaria. Zion's in there, but he does not deliver up Zion ultimately. But he does deliver up every defense city in Judah. But that's actually in a second invasion of the Assyrian. In the first invasion is when he took Israel captive. And if Amos is referring to that, then he would be referring to the cities of Israel, and specifically Samaria, the city. But also what he's saying, also just in general, that arrogancy God hates. And when arrogancy puts itself in a palace and stuff, that's why empires fall. Because God hates empires, and God hates the kind of people that empires produce, which are arrogant, proud, way too wealthy, way too full of themselves, way too megalomaniacal even in their thinking. And megalomaniacal. Okay, I'll never say it again. In their thinking. And so they must be brought down. That's what I say. I'd rather our country back off from that and repent. And we can, because I think we got a lot of power here of people who maybe could begin to see it, understand the wisdom, because they believe in Christ and they believe in the Bible. But a lot of times we have ideas that are contrary, and we think like, oh, that's how it should be. It's one thing to fight a war that's just in the defense of your country. It's another one to fight a war in order to create world domination. And that's basically what we're trying to do. That's why NATO is in Ukraine. It's about world domination. That's why we're in Taiwan, so we can continue to dominate East Asia, Southeast Asia. We want to continue our dominance, so we need to have certain power points we got to maintain. And it's like, if we would peacefully make peace and let go of those things, maybe the other people would see us as less of a threat and feel less of a need to be quite so on their toes. We're all nuclear armed. I mean, it's not like, but here's the thing, we're nuclear armed, but like, the Chinese just sent like 1 million people here, a lot of them young men and stuff. It's like, well, that's enough to create just a low-level insurgency. You have no idea. I mean, I don't know how well it would work since they're so, it would probably create a major Chinese backlash. I hope they're not doing that. I hope they don't think, I hope it's just a contingency plan on their part if we do something funny. And then hopefully maybe we don't do something funny, and then their contingency becomes like, we'll just keep holding pattern, just stay where you are, and maybe we corrupt them with our culture. I don't know. But arrogancy, pride goes before a fall, and that does not just apply to people. America can't act like the worst sinner in the world any more than I can and expect God to bless it, because it's a nation. It doesn't got a soul. It doesn't got salvation. It doesn't got an official, it's like America, the idea of the United States of America as a republic had nothing to do with Jesus. So Jesus got no obligation to us. And if we do good, if our country does good and fears God and the way it behaves in the world, it will be blessed. Absolutely. I always believe that. Why not? I mean, we will also bless ourselves by bringing about peace. with other nations. That should be our primary goal, is to just make peace and keep peace. Why have war? Why not just, whatever. Because they must have war, because it's very expensive and very profitable for a few people. And that's it. As far as the goodness that comes from it. I mean, yeah, you could say, like, well, we defeat an evil person. Putin ain't no Hitler. And a lot of other things ain't what they say they are. Like I said, I don't even believe in... I mean, I just don't like the idea that people can just be declared terrorists and then they lose all their rights. You have to have a trial. As far as that, you can't... Innocent until proven guilty. No, he's a terrorist. Oh, then guilty, guilty, guilty. What? Send him off to Guantanamo without a trial. Hold him indefinitely without habeas corpus. So we're reneging on the Magna Carta now? No, the king gets to decide everything. He's a terrorist, he's a terrorist, he's a terrorist. Drone him, throw him in the prison, Is that what, that's the direction they want to go, and they've done things like that. Let me just look a little here. Let me see here. Yeah, let's see. Oh, well, you know what? We're going to read the next, let's see. We'll pick it up at verse 9, and I don't think we'll also read chapter 7. We'll read it tomorrow, because we'll get into that, I think. All right, well, anyways, thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. As I always do, love getting into the Word here and thinking about it. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
These are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day. Behold, it is written before me, I will not keep silence, but will recompense, even recompense into their bosom. Your iniquities and the iniquities of your fathers together, saith the Lord, which have burned incense upon the mountains, and blasphemed me upon the hills. Therefore I will measure their former work into their bosom. Thus saith the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster,